Have you ever had your character assassinated by someone you completely trusted? You stand there, entirely innocent, while vicious lies are spoken about you. And the worst part is that people actually believe them. The injustice burns in your chest like a swallowed hot coal. You want to scream, to defend yourself, to gather the evidence, and force them to see the truth. You lie awake at 2 a.m, staring at the ceiling in the dark, your mind endlessly rehearsing the conversations, the betrayals, and the sheer audacity of the falsehoods. Your pulse races. A heavy, sickening knot twists in your stomach. Perhaps you are walking through this exact valley right now. You are watching your reputation be dismantled, brick by brick, by the careless, malicious whispers of people you once broke bread with. What do you do when the damage is already done? When the text messages have been sent, the rumors have spread, and the narrative has been twisted so far beyond reality that you do not even recognize the villain they have made you out to be? What does God say when you are angry, heartbroken, and utterly exhausted by how you were treated? Listen closely to the words of Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 11. I want you to let this settle deep into your spirit today. But the Lord is with me like a dread warrior. Therefore my persecutors will stumble. They will not overcome me. Let me read that one more time, and I want you to pay attention to those 2 specific words. But the Lord is with me like a dread warrior. Dread warrior. In the original Hebrew text, the word used here is asterisk aretz. It does not just mean a strong soldier or a capable guard. It translates to an awe-inspiring, terrifying, ruthless champion. A force that strikes absolute fear into the hearts of its enemies. It is a presence that shakes the ground, a defender whose very shadow causes the opposition to tremble and drop their weapons. You might feel small right now. You might feel entirely defenseless, stripped of your voice, and robbed of your dignity. But standing right beside you in the unseen spiritual realm is an awe-inspiring, terrifying champion who sees every tear, hears every whispered lie, and records every single injustice. When the prophet Jeremiah wrote these words, he was living through a waking nightmare. He had not done anything wrong. In fact, he was doing exactly what God had asked him to do. Yet, he had been falsely accused of treason by his own people. Imagine the sensory reality of that scene. The leaders of his city, the very religious elites who should have protected him, smeared his name. A priest named Pashur struck him, a physical, humiliating blow across the face in front of onlookers. Then, they dragged Jeremiah to the upper Benjamin gate and locked his battered body in the public stocks. Picture the agony of that moment. The heavy, splintered wood clamped tight around his wrists and ankles, restricting his movement, the cold night air biting at his bruised, exposed skin. The burning shame flushing his cheeks as crowds walked by, pointing, laughing, and spitting. He was a complete laughingstock, utterly helpless against their coordinated lies. He could not free his hands to shield his face. He could not raise his voice loud enough to drown out their jeers. But in the middle of that profound injustice, wrapped in physical pain and emotional agony, Jeremiah recognized the first biblical truth you must anchor your soul to when you are facing the brutal storm of character assassination. The first truth is this: God is the keeper of your innocence. And he writes the final chapter, When you are slandered, the immediate temptation is to panic, believing that the lie will become your permanent reality. But look at the life of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Perhaps you know the feeling of being punished for doing the exact right thing. Joseph was a man of impeccable integrity. When Potiphar's wife cornered him, grabbing his cloak and demanding he compromise his morals, he fled. He chose righteousness. And what was his reward? A fabricated story. A ruined reputation. A character assassination so severe that it landed him in a dark, suffocating Egyptian dungeon. Imagine Joseph sitting in the damp, lightless belly of that prison, the air smelling of stale rot and rust, the heavy iron chains biting into his wrists and chafing his ankles. He knew he was innocent, but the world outside thought he was a monster. He had no lawyer, no platform to clear his name, no way to reach out to his friends and explain his side of the story. Yet, the scriptures repeat a rhythmic, deeply comforting phrase throughout that dark chapter, "But the Lord was with Joseph." The dread warrior was in the cell. God did not immediately break the physical chains, but he was working in the unseen, orchestrating a vindication so massive that Joseph would eventually be elevated to the second highest throne in the empire. The lies of Potiphar's wife could not stop the destiny God had authored. The same is true for you. The lies spoken against you cannot derail the purpose God has placed on your life. The second biblical truth you must embrace is that your silence is often your strongest weapon when the dread warrior is fighting for you. This goes against every human instinct. When someone attacks your character, you want to wage war. You want to gather your allies and launch a counterattack. But consider David in the wilderness. He had been anointed as the future king. Yet he was hunted like an animal by King Saul. Saul launched a relentless smear campaign, labeling David a traitor, an insurrectionist, and a violent threat to the nation. Saul's lies turned David into a fugitive. Imagine David hiding in the cold, limestone caves of En-Gedi, the smell of damp earth filling his nostrils, the rough, jagged rocks digging into his back as he tried to catch a few hours of fitful sleep. One day, the perfect opportunity for revenge presented itself. Saul walked right into the very cave where David was hiding in the shadows. David's men whispered in the darkness, urging him to strike, to take back his reputation, to kill the man who had ruined his life. David's heart must have pounded loudly in his ears. The cold metal of the sword was in his hand. The man who had assassinated his character was completely vulnerable. But what did David do? He merely crept forward and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He refused to strike down his enemy, stepping out of the cave and declaring across the ravine, "May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you." David understood a profound mystery of God's kingdom. Stepping in to defend himself through vengeance would only lower him to Saul's level. He stepped back so the dread warrior could step forward. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do when you are falsely accused is to close your mouth, drop your weapons, and let God be your defense attorney. The third and most profoundly comforting truth is that when you suffer the agony of a ruined reputation, you are sharing in the fellowship of Christ's sufferings. You are never closer to the heart of Jesus than when you are misunderstood, falsely accused, and betrayed by those you loved. Fast forward centuries later to the cobblestone courtyard of the high priest, late into the cold night. Jesus of Nazareth, the only truly innocent man to ever walk the earth, stands bound before a council of angry, conniving men. Hear the chaotic, overlapping voices of the false witnesses, bribed to tell lies about him. They twisted his words. They called him a blasphemer, a drunkard, a demon-possessed madman, a threat to the empire. Feel the heavy tension in the room as the high priest stands up, glares at Jesus, and demands, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?" But Jesus remained silent. He gave no answer. He did not scream. He did not present a brilliant logical defense. He did not call down legions of angels from the heavens to incinerate the liars where they stood. The Apostle Peter later wrote that when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. Jesus knows the exact, agonizing sting of character assassination. He knows what it feels like to have crowds that once cheered for him suddenly scream, "Crucify him!" based on a twisted, fabricated narrative. When you weep over your ruined reputation, Jesus does not look at you from a distance with mild sympathy. He sits beside you, bearing the physical and emotional scars of the ultimate betrayal, and says, "I know. I have been there. I am with you." So, what do you do right now, in the middle of the mess? While the lies are still circulating and the injustice still burns in your chest, you stop trying to control the narrative. You take a deep breath, you open your hands, and you release your desperate grip on what other people think of you. People will believe what they want to believe. But human opinion does not dictate heavenly reality. The Lord is with you like a dread warrior. Let that sink into your tired bones today. You do not have to be the strong one. You do not have to have the perfect comeback. You do not need to exhaust yourself trying to vindicate your own name. You only need to stand quietly behind the awe-inspiring, terrifying, ruthless champion who loves you fiercely. Let the persecutor stumble. Let the liars exhaust themselves in their own deceit. They will not overcome you. Keep your hands clean. Keep your heart pure. Forgive those who know not what they do. And watch how the dread warrior fights for you.